Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a journey stitched from history, half-truths, half-dreams, and entirely made to lull you into that delicious pre-sleep haze. Picture yourself outside under a starry night. No phone buzzing in your pocket, no emails screaming for your attention, just the weightless quiet of the sky. Every star above is a story, some burned out long before you were born, some still flickering like stubborn nightlights. You probably won't survive this. No, not because of me rambling on, but because if you were really dropped into the middle of history, chances are you'd trip over a clay pot or insult the wrong emperor before bedtime. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You look up at the velvet sky, and it feels older than memory itself. The stars don't just twinkle, they hum with ancient stories, waiting to seep into your thoughts. Somewhere between Orion's belt and the faint streak of the Milky Way, you imagine entire civilizations rising and fading, just as quietly as the constellations drift westward. The air feels cool, maybe too crisp for comfort, but that helps. You settle in, ready to wander through forgotten worlds. You walk across a wide field, soft grass brushing against your ankles. It's easy to imagine how long people have stared at these very same stars, inventing myths and destinies out of their glowing patterns. In fact, one mainstream historical fact: the Babylonians around 1000 BCE mapped many of the constellations you still know today. Their sky wasn't just decoration, it was a calendar, a spiritual text, and a cosmic warning system all at once. Imagine their priests standing on ziggurats, peering at the heavens with the same wonder you feel now, though perhaps a bit more stressed. After all, predicting eclipses was a full-time job, not a cool stargazing hobby. And then there's the quirky tidbit. Some ancient cultures believed shooting stars weren't lucky at all, but rather wandering souls that fell out of place. Think of it. While today you might wish for a new phone, someone 2,000 years ago might have whispered a nervous prayer that the heavens wouldn't drop an ancestor into their lap. The universe hasn't changed much, but our bedtime stories about it sure have. The night feels heavy with possibility. Your footsteps don't echo, but you swear you're not alone. Shapes move on the horizon, half shadow, half dream. Maybe they're shepherds guiding sheep. Maybe they're poets chasing metaphors. Historians still argue whether humans first created myths to explain the stars, or whether the stars themselves inspired myths that shaped societies. You tilt your head back, a little dizzy from staring too long, and think. Either way, you're standing in the middle of that argument, balanced between fact and fable. You notice a breeze pick up, whispering through the grass. It carries a faint smell of smoke, though there's no fire nearby. You close your eyes, and the wind shifts. It's no longer modern. It tastes of wood and oil, like an ancient torch burning in the distance. When you open them again, the field has blurred at the edges, and the night sky seems closer, stars pressing down like curious eyes. The ground is dotted with stones now, arranged in deliberate circles. You brush your hand across one, cool, rough, steady. For a second, you wonder if this is Stonehenge, Or maybe just some village's forgotten gathering place. Archaeologists love to debate whether these stone circles were calendars, ritual sites, or just really bad attempts at furniture arrangement. You crouch there, fingers tracing grooves, imagining the builders. They weren't thinking of tourists or drone footage. They were likely just trying to get the seasons right so they didn't starve. A thought bubbles up. The stars you're watching are the same ones that guided sailors across oceans, that lured wanderers deeper into deserts, that told lovers it was safe to sneak out at night. They've seen empires bloom and collapse, wars rage, and peace treaties signed under their gaze. The quiet hum of the sky feels almost smug, as if the stars are saying, "We've seen it all, kid. Your troubles? Small potatoes." Which, frankly, is comforting. You stretch out on the grass, closing your eyes again. The field fades into darkness, but the stars burn behind your eyelids. You imagine you're lying on the back of a giant cosmic creature, maybe a turtle, maybe a dragon, maybe just some lazy cat who hasn't noticed humanity perched on its spine. You chuckle softly at the image, and it echoes in the stillness. It's the kind of silly thought that makes bedtime sweeter, the universe as one gigantic pet purring you to sleep. But the silence isn't total. Somewhere nearby, you hear footsteps, not menacing, just deliberate. You don't sit up, you just listen. A voice hums low, melodic, carrying no words you understand. It could be a lullaby or maybe a chant. You know one thing, people across every culture have sung to the stars, whether to soothe themselves or to beg the universe for mercy. Tonight, you're simply letting that timeless sound wash over you, blend in with the fan hum back in your own room, merging centuries into one sleepy song. As your eyelids grow heavier, the field dissolves into something else, but the stars follow you. They'll be your companions through every step of this wandering history, glittering in the background like a subtle soundtrack. After all, if the ancients trusted them to guide caravans and ships, you can trust them to guide you through tonight's story. The cool grass is still under you, but softer now, like a bed of moss. You let yourself sink into it, chest rising and falling in rhythm with the world around you. You feel safe, though you know history isn't always safe. Maybe that's the fun of it. You get to explore ruins, courts, and battles, all while tucked in under your blanket, your pillow, your only shield. No emperors to offend here, no ancient diseases to worry about. Just the hush of the night, the quiet murmur of forgotten lives, and the gentle nudge toward dreams. You're still lying on that mossy ground when the hum of the stars shifts into something heavier, something that smells of earth baked under a relentless sun. You blink, and the soft meadow grass is gone. In its place rises the shimmering outline of a city so old it feels half-imagined. Babylon. The air is thick, warm, and perfumed with unfamiliar spices. You hear distant water splashing, which makes no sense, because isn't this supposed to be desert? Then again, this is Babylon, a place where kings supposedly bent rivers to their will and turned dust into paradise. You shuffle forward, and your sandals, or maybe bare feet, because who knows what dream footwear you're rocking, slap against baked clay bricks. The walls tower impossibly high, baked gold in the moonlight. Ancient historians swore the walls were so wide that two chariots could ride side by side across the top, though modern scholars roll their eyes and say, "Hey, maybe that's exaggerated." Historians still argue whether those walls were as massive as described, or if ancient scribes just liked to stretch the truth for dramatic effect. Either way, as you tilt your head back, the stonework seems endless, and you can't help but feel small, like an ant outside a cosmic sandbox. You walk through an archway carved with lions and strange creatures, their eyes catching moonlight. The Ishtar Gate, one of the most famous wonders of Babylon, stretches before you, its glazed blue bricks glowing faintly, as though they're alive. The lions look ready to leap down and chase you, though thankfully, they're too polite. Fun fact: archaeologists pieced together parts of this gate and re-erected them in a Berlin museum, where it still stuns visitors today. But here, in your dreamlike stroll, the gate is whole, towering, magnificent, and faintly humming like a lullaby in stone. Past the gate, the city opens into winding streets where torches flicker against mud brick walls. You smell baking bread, spiced stew, maybe a hint of something roasted that your sleepy brain insists smells like late-night pizza. People shuffle past you in long robes, eyes tired but kind, as though you've always belonged here. The murmur of voices blends into a rhythm, traders haggling, children giggling, guards muttering about their night shifts. It feels both ordinary and surreal, like walking into someone else's dream halfway through. And then, there it is, the hanging gardens, or at least what you think must be them, rising tier upon tier, lush with vines, palms, and blossoms. The gardens look like a mountain sprouting from the middle of the city. Water trickles down in tiny waterfalls, sparkling in torchlight. It's almost too beautiful, too fantastical, which makes sense because, quirky tidbit alert, many modern historians doubt the Hanging Gardens even existed in Babylon. Some think they were actually in Nineveh, built by a completely different king. Others argue the gardens were nothing more than poetic exaggeration. Yet here they stand before you, green and fragrant, as if your imagination insists they must be real. You climb stone steps slick with mist, running your fingers over leaves that glisten in moonlight. The air cools the higher you go, scented with jasmine and damp earth. It feels like stepping inside a greenhouse crossed with a dream. At the top, you peer over the edge and see the city glowing beneath you like a firefly's lantern. Babylon doesn't feel dusty or dry anymore. It feels alive, pulsing, eternal. You wonder if King Nebuchadnezzar II built this place for love, as the legend goes, to remind his wife of the green hills she missed. It's romantic, though let's be real. If someone today built an entire mountain of gardens just to impress their partner, Instagram would probably crash. As you lean against a balustrade, water trickles past in hidden channels, an ancient irrigation marvel. This was engineering far beyond its time, and you can't help but marvel at how much effort people poured into beauty, not just survival. Sure, they had wars, taxes, and annoying neighbors, but they also dreamed big enough to drag mountains into their city and cover them with life. Maybe that's the real point. You're standing in proof that even in the harshest places, humans will go out of their way to build something that makes you stop, breathe, and feel wonder. Below, the streets quiet as night deepens. Torches burn lower and shadows stretch longer. Somewhere, a harp plays softly, its strings trembling in the stillness. The melody drifts up toward you, mixing with the rustle of leaves. You close your eyes, letting it wash over you, and for a moment, The entire city feels like it's breathing in rhythm with you. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. But there's still that faint question lingering, like an itch in the back of your mind. Was any of this real? Did the hanging gardens ever truly exist? Or are you just dreaming someone else's dream? Historians still argue whether this wonder of the world belonged to Babylon or was just a story transplanted from elsewhere. You smile at the thought, because it doesn't really matter. For tonight, the gardens are here, the stars are watching, and your heart beats steady with the city below. A breeze tugs at your robe, cool and damp from the water. It feels like the gardens are trying to tuck you in, vines swaying like lullabies in green. You sink to the stone floor, leaning against a pillar, eyelids drooping. The music below softens, torches flicker out one by one, and Babylon fades into the same gentle hush you left behind under the stars. History, myth, or dream, it all feels the same once sleep reaches out its hand. The cool hush of Babylon's gardens dissolves as your dream feet shuffle forward, and suddenly the air is sharper, drier, full of sand and stone. You squint, rubbing your eyes, and the horizon reveals three massive silhouettes, triangular, immovable, glaring at you with the patience of eternity. You've landed at the pyramids of Giza, and if you're expecting some grand tourist entrance with signs pointing to gift shops, think again. Out here, it's just you, endless desert, and those ancient giants watching silently. You walk toward them, and the ground crunches with every step. Each grain of sand grinding like it's been waiting thousands of years for you. The heat hasn't fully left from the day, and the stones seem to radiate warmth, like old bones holding on to memory. One mainstream historical fact: the Great Pyramid of Khufu was built around 4,500 years ago and held the record as the tallest human-made structure for over 3,800 years. That's longer than most modern buildings will even survive without being turned into parking lots. You tilt your head back, and it's dizzying, each block stacked on block, a mountain made by hands instead of tectonics. But then comes the quirky tidbit. Some Egyptians used crocodile dung as a form of contraceptive. Imagine standing in the shadow of the most ambitious architecture humanity had ever attempted, while somewhere nearby, someone's quietly mixing crock droppings for family planning. It's a reminder that history is never as tidy as textbooks. Pyramids and poop jokes coexisted, and somehow it all made sense to them. You creep closer to the pyramid, running your fingers along the stone. The blocks are rough, weathered by time, not the smooth surfaces you've seen in illustrations. Most of the outer casing stones were stripped long ago, recycled into later buildings, leaving this raw skeleton exposed. It feels alive under your hand, as though it's humming with secrets. Historians still argue whether the pyramids were built purely with ramps, ingenious counterweights, or some technique lost to time. You picture thousands of workers, farmers, artisans, maybe conscripts, hauling stones, singing rhythmic chants to keep pace. Was it backbreaking misery or national pride? Probably a messy cocktail of both. A cool wind snakes around you, whispering through gaps in the stone. It smells faintly of dust and maybe incense, like a tomb that's only half forgotten. You glance around, half expecting a guard to shoo you away, but the desert is empty except for your footprints. Carefully, you slip inside a low entrance tunnel, ducking your head. The darkness swallows you whole, and the silence deepens until even your breath sounds like a trespass. The air is stale, pressing heavy on your chest, and each step echoes too loudly. Your fingers brush carved walls, tracing hieroglyphs of falcons, eyes, and gods with animal heads. They look both welcoming and warning, like they know you're not supposed to be here, but they'll allow it, for now. Somewhere deeper, you hear a faint drip of water, or maybe that's just your imagination. Inside the burial chamber, the ceiling looms low, and in the center rests the massive stone sarcophagus. Empty now, but it radiates the same authority as if the pharaoh were still napping inside. You stand there, awkward, like you've walked into someone's bedroom without knocking. A stray thought crosses your mind. Imagine the pharaoh waking up, stretching, and saying, "You mind not staring while I'm trying to get my eternal rest?" You stifle a laugh, because the chamber doesn't seem like the right place for humor, though maybe a little sarcasm keeps you from shivering. The weight of history presses closer, and your mind drifts to the mystery of why these structures were built so precisely. Was it just tombs, or were they astronomical markers, aligned with Orion's belt and the rising of Sirius? You tilt your head, picturing stars threading through the shafts above, guiding souls upward. Maybe it's all symbolic. Maybe it's literal rocket science of the ancient world. No one fully knows. You lean against the cool stone wall, eyes closing for a moment. The darkness feels endless, but not threatening. It's more like the pyramid is a giant cradle, rocking you slowly, whispering lullabies in a language you don't understand. You think about how people once carried treasures, food, and even miniature boats into these tombs, because eternity, apparently, is one long picnic. When you step back out, the night sky nearly blinds you. The stars blaze like diamonds scattered across black velvet, and the pyramids stand darker than shadow. You flop down into the sand, grains clinging to your arms, but you don't care. You're just a speck lying beside monuments that laughed at time. The breeze sighs across the plateau, and you sigh with it, your chest rising and falling in rhythm with the desert. It's easy to see why so many myths and curses grew around these pyramids. They're too perfect, too enduring. They don't feel human, and yet every block was shaped by human hands, every stone dragged inch by inch. You close your eyes, half grateful you don't actually have to join that labor crew. You'd last maybe 10 minutes before faking an injury. But as sleepiness pulls at you again, you realize the pyramids don't need you to figure them out. They'll keep standing, silent and smug, while historians argue forever. Tonight they're just part of your dreamscape, a reminder that even the heaviest stones can lull you into lightness. The desert sand softens beneath you, and when you blink awake, the stars are still there, but their arrangement feels different, warmer, closer, threaded with firelight. You sit up to find yourself in a circle of stones, flames crackling in the center, shadows dancing like puppets on the walls of whitewashed homes nearby. The air smells of olive oil, roasted figs, and wood smoke. You're in ancient Greece now, perched at the edge of an Athenian hearth, where myths are born not from scrolls, but from the lips of storytellers. The fire snaps, and sparks leap skyward, mimicking constellations. A group of children sit cross-legged, wide-eyed, while an older man, bearded of course because it's Greece, leans forward with a grin. He waves his hand dramatically, spinning a tale about a mortal too bold for the gods. His voice dips and rises, each word dripping with drama, pulling everyone closer to the flame. One mainstream historical fact: oral tradition was the lifeblood of Greek culture, and works like Homer's Iliad and Odyssey were recited aloud centuries before anyone thought to write them down. Tonight, you're sitting in that tradition, words wrapping around you like a blanket. But here comes the quirky tidbit. Some Greeks believed that sneezing was a divine sign, a message from the gods themselves. So if someone sneezes mid-story, the entire crowd might gasp and nod as though Zeus himself just approved the plot twist. You glance around, half expecting someone to sneeze right now, partly for cosmic affirmation, partly so you can chuckle quietly at how timeless some superstitions really are. The tale unfolds with exaggerated gestures, a hero swinging his sword against impossible odds, gods scheming from above, mortals suffering consequences for hubris, which is a fancy word for messing around too much and finding out. The firelight flickers across the faces around you, their eyes reflecting both awe and mischief. It strikes you that these myths weren't bedtime stories in the safe sense. They were cautionary, thrilling, terrifying, equal parts entertainment and education. Parents used them to explain storms, earthquakes, and why you should never, ever annoy Hera. Historians still argue whether Homer was a single person or a collective of bards shaping and reshaping epics over centuries. Either way, as you listen, it's clear that ownership doesn't matter. Stories live in the telling, not the name attached to them. The rhythm of the voice lulls you, even when the tale describes monsters with too many heads. Somehow, the scarier it gets, the sleepier you feel. The storyteller pauses, leans forward, and drops his voice to a whisper. The fire crackles louder than his words now, but you catch fragments. Labyrinth, Minotaur, never look back. A chill runs down your spine, but not from fear, from recognition. You've heard this before, in classrooms and cartoons, but here, in the fire's glow, it feels raw and new. You're not an audience. You're a participant. The myths cling to you like smoke, seeping into your clothes, your hair, your very breath. Behind you, an old woman ladles stew from a pot into clay bowls. She presses one into your hands without a word. The broth is salty, tangy, steaming against your palms. You sip carefully, flavors grounding you in the moment. The food and the stories belong together, sustenance for the body and mind. You can almost hear a Greek philosopher somewhere muttering, "Yes, yes, balance is key." A dog sprawls at your feet, tail flicking in lazy approval of the warmth. Its eyes droop shut as the storyteller launches into another tale. This one about a woman weaving her grief into a tapestry so detailed it traps even the gods. The rhythm is hypnotic, like waves against a shore. You imagine sailors clinging to these very stories when they lost sight of land, whispering them into the dark as both prayer and comfort. You stretch out, propping your chin on your hands, the fire painting your skin gold. You think of how these myths traveled across centuries, shaping art, theater, even memes. Yes, somewhere between this fire pit and your world, someone turned Medusa into a Halloween costume and Hercules into a Disney character. The gods would probably roll their eyes, but maybe they'd secretly enjoy the fanfare. As the story winds down, the bearded man leans back, satisfied. The children groan for more. But even they look drowsy, lids heavy from the glow. You feel it too, the way the fire lulls you deeper, like the flames are whispering, "Close your eyes, mortal. dream of gods, heroes, and all the nonsense in between. The fire pops one last spark, and it drifts upward, vanishing into the sky. You follow its trail until it blends with the same stars that guided Odysseus, the same ones carved into myths long before you showed up. You lie back on the cool earth, a full belly, a heart buzzing with stories, and eyes that won't stay open much longer. The last sparks of the Athenian fire fade, and when you blink again, your body feels heavier, the ground harder, and the air smells faintly of iron, wine, and old stone. You push yourself upright and find yourself standing on cobbled streets, glistening faintly under moonlight. The stones are slick, worn smooth by centuries of sandals, wheels, and maybe the occasional spilled amphora. Welcome to Rome after midnight, where even in dreams, the city never really sleeps. You wander past looming columns, their shadows stretching across the forum like long fingers. Somewhere in the distance, water trickles from a fountain shaped like a lion's head. A few torches sputter, casting halos of orange against marble facades. Rome feels both massive and strangely hushed at this hour, as though it's holding its breath until dawn. One mainstream historical fact: Rome at its peak housed over 1 million people, making it the largest city in the ancient world. Imagine all those footsteps, voices, and lives crammed into this stone labyrinth. And yet tonight, you've caught the rare silence between the echoes. You brush your hand across a wall carved with graffiti. Yes, even Rome had graffiti. In fact, archaeologists have found scrawled insults, jokes, and even, for a good time, call-style advertisements in Pompeii. Quirky tidbit: one Roman carved a complaint about the bread quality in a bakery. So while emperors debated conquests, regular folks were busy dunking on the local carbs. You grin at the thought, tracing the faint grooves under your fingertips, proof that sarcasm is basically eternal. The Colosseum looms in the near distance, its arches black holes against the sky. You hesitate at the entrance, half expecting ghostly cheers and the metallic tang of blood. But inside, it's eerily calm. The arena floor is gone, leaving a skeleton of stone tunnels beneath, once used to hold gladiators and wild animals. The silence feels heavier here, as though the walls remember every shout and clash. You step onto a broken platform, peering down. Your imagination fills the space, gladiators stretching nervously, lions pacing, stagehands preparing elaborate traps. Historians still argue whether the fights were always to the death or often staged with safety in mind. Either way, the crowd didn't come for subtlety, they came for spectacle. You sink onto one of the marble benches, polished smooth by centuries of spectators. You lean back, imagining the thunder of 50,000 voices shaking the air. The ghostly roar almost makes your chest vibrate. Then you remember, those same voices also demanded bread, public baths, and gossip. The Romans loved their drama, whether in the arena or the Senate. You chuckle softly, maybe not so different from binge-watching reality TV, just with higher stakes and worse dental care. Leaving the Colosseum, you stroll down a street lit by a few scattered oil lamps. The air carries the faint sweetness of fermenting grapes mixed with sewage, a reminder that even the eternal city had its less glamorous smells. A stray cat darts across your path, tail high, as if it owns the place, which, let's be real, it probably does. You follow it past taverns where laughter spills out along with music from flutes and drums. The doors creak, shadows dance, and you catch fragments of conversation about politics, love affairs, and maybe the latest scandal involving an emperor. Some things, it seems, never change. You stop at a fountain where water gurgles lazily, cool and inviting. Dipping your hands in, you splash your face, and the chill shocks you awake just enough to notice the details carved into the stone. Nymphs, dolphins, and an inscription dedicating it to a god you can't quite remember. The water tastes mineral-rich, like licking the inside of time itself. Romans prided themselves on aqueducts, bringing fresh water across impossible distances, and as you sip, you realize you're literally drinking their genius. A gentle breeze stirs, carrying the scent of baking bread. Somewhere a night baker is hard at work, preparing loaves for the morning rush. You drift toward the smell, following your nose until you stumble upon a tiny shop with its shutters cracked open. Warmth spills out, along with the golden glow of an oven. The baker doesn't see you, or maybe chooses not to, as he kneads dough with steady rhythm. His movements are hypnotic, almost like a lullaby for the eyes. You could stand here for hours, just watching the simple act of bread becoming bread. Above, the stars peek through patches of cloud. You tilt your head back, tracing the constellations Romans borrowed from the Greeks, renaming them in Latin. For them, these stars weren't just decoration. They were guides for sailors, signs for augurs, and the perfect backdrop for whispered promises on balconies. You can almost hear the rustle of togas in the shadows, the hush of lovers sneaking past marble columns. Your steps slow as the city around you hums, alive but not overwhelming. Rome after midnight feels less like an empire and more like a giant heart beating softly. You lie down near a column base, stone cool against your back, and close your eyes. The faint splash of fountains, the distant strum of a lyre, and the whisper of night wind blend into a single rhythm. You breathe in, breathe out, matching the eternal pulse of the city. The stone column you were leaning against seems to melt beneath your shoulder, and when you blink, the warm glow of Rome has dimmed into something softer, more intimate. The flicker of flames is still there, but this time it's not roaring torches or grand ovens. It's the steady glow of candles. You're standing in a stone hall where shadows stretch long, and the air smells of wax, parchment, and faint incense. Welcome to the medieval monastery, where silence is sacred and candlelight is the only clock. You step forward, your footsteps muffled by worn flagstones. The walls are thick, almost womb-like, shutting out the noise of the world. A hooded figure glides past, his robe brushing the floor, candle in hand. He doesn't look at you, but his light dances across your path, guiding you deeper. One mainstream historical fact. During the Middle Ages, monasteries were centers of learning, preserving and copying texts that might have otherwise been lost. Without these monks hunched over desks, scratching ink by candlelight, entire chapters of human knowledge might have vanished forever. Imagine trying to fall asleep at night without someone having passed down the recipe for bread or the instructions for building arches. The air is heavy with the smell of vellum, animal skin stretched into parchment. A door creaks open, and you peek into a scriptorium, where monks sit at wooden desks, quills scratching in steady rhythm. The room is hushed, except for the faint rustle of pages turning. You notice one monk has doodled a tiny dragon in the margin of a holy text. Quirky tidbit. Many medieval manuscripts are filled with marginalia, strange little drawings of animals playing trumpets, snails jousting with knights, and even monks making fun of each other. Turns out even the most serious scribes couldn't resist slipping in a bit of mischief. You wander closer, the glow of candles warming your cheeks. The steady scratch of quills almost sounds like rain, soothing and rhythmic. You watch as one monk pauses, dips his quill in ink, and whispers a prayer before continuing. Historians still argue whether the monks copied purely out of duty, devotion, or a mix of both. Were they preserving knowledge for the glory of God, or did some secretly relish the act of keeping stories alive? You lean against the wall, feeling the debate settle like dust around you, and realize it doesn't matter. The result is the same. Words endured, and so did the whispers of history. Stepping back into the hallway, you hear the low rumble of chanting. You follow it, descending stone steps into the chapel. Rows of candles flicker against stained glass windows that glimmer even in darkness. The monks stand in a line, their voices rising and falling in a chant that feels less like music and more like breathing. The sound vibrates in your chest, steady and hypnotic. You close your eyes, and the chant becomes a lullaby, washing over you like waves against a shore. You glance at the flickering candles and can't help a sleepy thought. Imagine living your entire life in cycles of light and shadow, bells marking every hour. No Netflix binges, no midnight snack runs, just prayer, work, and silence. You'd probably last 2 days before sneaking into the kitchen for extra bread. Yet here, it feels strangely comforting. Simplicity has its own charm, especially when you're this tired. A breeze slips through the chapel, carrying the scent of herbs. You follow it into a small cloister garden where moonlight spills over neat rows of plants. Lavender, sage, maybe even mint. A monk bends quietly, snipping leaves into a basket. He glances up briefly, nods once, then returns to his work. You breathe in deeply, the fragrance soothing, almost medicinal. It makes sense. Monasteries weren't just libraries. They were also hospitals, using herbs to heal the sick. You pluck a sprig of lavender, rubbing it between your fingers until its perfume lingers, calming you deeper. Nearby, a fountain trickles into a stone basin, the water glimmering silver in the moonlight. You sit beside it, trailing your hand through the cool surface. The sound blends with the chant still faint in the background, a perfect harmony of nature and devotion. You tilt your head back, gazing at the stars framed by cloister arches. Somehow, even here, those same constellations follow you, like loyal companions. The night deepens, candles burn lower, and the monks drift quietly back to their cells, robes whispering across the floor. The garden falls silent, except for the fountain's gentle murmur. You lie back on the cool stone bench, lavender in hand, eyelids fluttering. The monastery doesn't feel heavy or strict anymore. It feels like a cocoon, a quiet pause in the chaos of history. You let the rhythm of chants and trickling water cradle you, drifting toward dreams. The lavender sprig slips from your fingers as you drift, and when your eyes crack open again, the air is no longer heavy with incense. It's sharp, dry, and laced with dust and spice. You sit up, squinting, and find yourself on a vast plain of rippling sand. The stars overhead seem brighter than ever, but the horizon glows faintly with moving lights. A caravan approaches, dozens of camels swaying like ships on a golden ocean, bells tinkling softly. Welcome to the Silk Road, where every grain of sand hides a story. The lead camel snorts as it passes you, its breath misting in the cool desert night. You fall into step beside the caravan, your sandals crunching softly. The traders speak in low voices, a mix of languages you can't understand, but somehow recognize. One mainstream historical fact: the Silk Road wasn't just a single road, but a sprawling network of trade routes that connected China to the Mediterranean for centuries. Along its dusty veins flowed silk, spices, precious stones, and even ideas that would reshape civilizations. Tonight, you're just another traveler swept up in that current. The smell of cinnamon and pepper drifts from a pack slung across a mule's back. It makes your stomach growl, but you're distracted by a stranger offering you something unexpected, a porcelain cup with steaming liquid. You sip cautiously. Tea, bitter, grassy, oddly soothing. Quirky tidbit: some merchants along the Silk Road chewed fermented mare's milk curds for energy on long journeys. You're silently grateful the stranger gave you tea instead. Curd-flavored breath might kill the sleepy vibe. The desert stretches endlessly, but the caravan moves in steady rhythm. Bells jingle, sand crunches, camels sigh dramatically, as camels always do. The stars above are so vivid they almost hum, like an orchestra keeping pace with your footsteps. Historians still argue whether the Silk Road spread more wealth or more disease, since the same caravans carried silk and plague alike. You shiver at the thought, tugging your robe tighter, but remind yourself, you're safely tucked in your own bed, not actually risking fleas. A trader sings softly, a tune rising and falling like waves. Others join, their voices weaving together until the whole caravan hums. It's not loud, but steady, a lullaby disguised as work song. You find yourself swaying to the rhythm, eyelids drooping even as you walk. The song mixes with the creak of leather harnesses, the shuffle of hooves, and the faint hiss of sand sliding underfoot. Eventually, the caravan halts at an oasis, where palm trees huddle around a pool of water shimmering under moonlight. Fires spark to life, their smoke spiraling skyward. Traders unpack bundles, laying out bolts of silk that shimmer like frozen waterfalls, and spices that perfume the air so strongly you could almost taste colors. Someone hands you a dried fig, sweet, chewy, grounding. You sink onto a woven mat, watching the firelight dance across bright fabrics. The conversation around you flows like the water in the pool. Snippets of Persian, Chinese, Arabic, and Greek swirl together. You don't understand the words, but the laughter is universal. You lean back, chewing your fig slowly, and think of how many cultures brushed shoulders here, how many tales were traded along with goods. You wonder if any of your own bedtime stories trace their roots back to nights like this. A merchant unrolls a scroll painted with strange symbols, showing a map of stars. He points at the sky, then back at the parchment, teaching others how to follow constellations across the desert. You tilt your head back, spotting the familiar shapes, Orion, the Big Dipper, but here they seem sharper, clearer, stitched into the heavens with silver thread. The knowledge feels ancient and fragile, like you're borrowing a compass written in light. The fire crackles, and one trader tells a tale about a faraway city of glass domes that catch the sun so brightly it blinds travelers for days. The others chuckle knowingly, as though it's half truth, half joke. Maybe it's an exaggeration. Maybe it's a memory warped by distance. But as the tale spills into the night, it settles into your bones like a dream waiting to be dreamed. You stretch out on a mat, sand soft beneath the weave, the night air cooling against your skin. The palm leaves rustle gently overhead, and the pool glimmers like a shard of moon fallen to earth. The camels grunt softly, curling down to rest, and the caravan's murmurs fade into silence. You close your eyes, wrapped in the scents of spice and smoke, the hum of history rocking you towards sleep. The rustle of palm leaves fades, and when you open your eyes, the desert sands have melted into soft moss. Lanterns glow like fireflies, casting golden halos over a quiet garden. You hear the gentle pluck of a stringed instrument, low and deliberate, each note sinking into the air as though it knows the night is listening. Welcome to the hush of a Japanese twilight garden, where every leaf seems deliberate, every silence intentional. You follow a stone path lined with glowing lanterns. Gravel crunches beneath your steps in a rhythm almost too loud for the serenity surrounding you. The scent of pine and plum blossoms drifts through the cool air, mingled with the faint smoke of incense. Ahead, a figure kneels by a small pond, dipping a bamboo ladle into still water. A sip, a pause, then another sip. This is the tea garden, and you're stumbling into a ritual older than your great-great-grandparents' great-great-grandparents. One mainstream historical fact: the Japanese tea ceremony, or chanoyu, became deeply connected with Zen Buddhism by the 16th century. It wasn't just about drinking tea, it was about mindfulness, humility, and finding beauty in simplicity. Tonight, you're not just sipping. You're inhaling centuries of practice disguised as boiling water and powdered leaves. You kneel at the edge of the pond, dipping your fingers in. The water is cool, mirroring the sky, where a crescent moon hangs, like a sliver of rice paper. A monkish figure gestures for you to follow him into a small wooden tea house. Inside, the space is plain: bare walls, tatami mats, one single flower in a ceramic vase. The quiet is so thick you almost whisper an apology for existing. As tea is prepared, the silence is punctuated only by the whisking sound of bamboo against porcelain, a soft froth rising like morning mist. The cup is placed before you, simple, rough, unglazed on one side. Quirky tidbit: collectors today pay fortunes for wabi-sabi tea bowls that look deliberately imperfect, chipped, or asymmetrical. You take a sip and wonder if anyone in the future will pay millions for your cracked coffee mug. The tea is bitter, but grounding. The warmth fills your chest, slowing your breath. You close your eyes, and the sound of a distant flute joins the night chorus. Gentle, haunting, like a ghost, politely humming. Historians still argue whether samurai truly followed Zen ideals of detachment in their daily lives, or whether it was more performance than practice. Did they genuinely meditate among lanterns, or was it just good PR for warriors with sharp swords and sharper reputations? You step outside, and the garden stretches before you. A koi pond ripples as a fish breaks the surface, scattering moonlight into trembling patterns. The lanterns glow low, guiding your steps across a wooden bridge arched delicately over water. Each board creaks softly, like a whisper reminding you that even tranquility has texture. A pair of samurai pass on the path, their armor faintly clinking beneath flowing robes. They bow slightly, their eyes calm but unreadable. You imagine the paradox. lives balanced between steel and silence, battlefields and gardens. One pauses to tie back his hair, and you catch the faint glimmer of a scar along his jaw. It's a reminder that peace and violence often lived side by side, uneasy, but inseparable. You wonder if he's thinking of duty, or if he's secretly planning which snack stall to hit at tomorrow's market. The garden opens onto a grove of cherry trees, their blossoms glowing pale under lantern light. A breeze stirs, sending petals drifting around you like slow snow. You stand still, letting them settle in your hair, your lap, your breath. Each petal feels like a tiny clock, marking the fleeting nature of beauty. You try to catch one, but it melts between your fingers, already gone. Beyond the grove, a shrine rests beneath a towering pine. Its wooden beams creak as if sighing under the weight of centuries. You light a stick of incense, its smoke curling upward into the night. The smell is sharp, sweet, grounding. You murmur a thought, maybe not a prayer exactly, but something between hope and thank you. The smoke drifts into the stars, carrying your words somewhere beyond your own ears. You wander back toward the pond, where the reflection of lanterns shivers with the ripples of koi. The flute has faded, replaced by the chirping of night insects, steady, hypnotic, like nature's lullaby. You lower yourself onto the wooden veranda of the tea house, legs dangling just above the ground. The air is cool, your body heavy. The tea's warmth lingers in your chest, softening every edge. Petals continue to fall, and the lanterns glow dimmer, their oil burning low. You lean back, eyelids heavy, the world blurred by drowsy edges. The garden doesn't ask you to stay awake. It only asks you to listen, to silence, to petals, to your own slowing breath. And so you do, until sleep folds over you like the petal-soft night. Your dreams of falling cherry blossoms dissolve into a humid haze, thick with the smell of earth after rain. You open your eyes to find yourself standing at the edge of a dense jungle. Vines twist like snakes around towering stone structures, and the cries of unseen birds echo overhead. Welcome to the world of the ancient Maya, where stone temples rise from the green like teeth, and time itself feels as tangled as the roots beneath your feet. You push aside a curtain of broad leaves, the jungle damp against your skin. The air hums with cicadas, a steady electric buzz that sets the tempo of your steps. A stone stairway stretches before you, half swallowed by moss. One mainstream historical fact: the Maya built great cities across Central America, with temples, palaces, and observatories aligned precisely to celestial events. Their understanding of astronomy was so advanced that they could predict eclipses centuries in advance. You pause to glance up, half expecting the moon itself to wink at you in approval. As you climb the steps, your hand brushes against carvings etched deep into the stone. Figures with elaborate headdresses, jaguars, and spirals twist together in cryptic designs. Quirky tidbit: some Mayan glyphs include what look suspiciously like cartoonish characters, frogs blowing conch shells, or scribes with exaggerated noses, proof that even in sacred stone, humor had its place. You chuckle quietly, imagining a stonecutter sneaking in a visual joke that no emperor could erase. The stairway leads to a wide platform overlooking the jungle canopy. A temple rises in front of you, its peak cutting into the sky. The setting sun ignites the stone into molten gold. You lean against the warm surface, the heat seeping into your bones. Historians still argue whether the great Mayan cities collapsed due to drought, warfare, or over-farming. Standing here, the jungle creeping back with relentless patience, you realize it might have been all of those, or maybe none. Sometimes civilizations fade the way dreams do, slowly, imperceptibly, until you're left wondering if they were ever fully awake. A sudden rustle startles you, but it's only a troop of monkeys swinging overhead, their chatter loud and mischievous. One pauses to glare at you, tail coiled around a branch, as if to say, "Don't touch my temple." You raise your hands in mock surrender. The monkey drops a piece of fruit that misses your head by inches. Guess you're not welcome at his bedtime story circle. You wander deeper into the temple, where shadows gather thickly. The air cools, and the silence is punctuated by the drip of water from cracks above. You run your hand along the walls, feeling grooves where once painted murals have faded. In the dim light, you can just make out a scene of warriors, dancers, and gods descending from the sky. You can't tell if they're celebrating or fighting, maybe both. At the heart of the chamber stands a stone altar, its surface worn smooth. A shaft of moonlight falls directly upon it, as if the heavens themselves keep this place on schedule. You sit down cross-legged before it, the stone cool against your skin, and close your eyes. The jungle outside hums, the temple breathes, and you begin to feel the weight of centuries pressing lightly on your shoulders. You picture priests standing where you are, chanting prayers, their voices echoing off the stone. Maybe they offered cacao beans or fragrant copal incense, sending smoke curling to the gods. Maybe they just liked the excuse to gather and gossip afterward about whose sandals looked the fanciest. You can almost hear their laughter, faint and warm, mixing with the rustle of leaves. You rise and step back out into the night. Fireflies blink in the humid air. Tiny lanterns guiding your path down a narrow stone causeway. The jungle thickens, vines dangling like curtains, and the sound of distant drums rises. You follow the rhythm to a clearing where dancers move in feathered costumes, their shadows leaping in the firelight. The music is hypnotic. Drums, flutes, rattles, all blending into a pulse that feels like the earth's heartbeat. You sway without realizing, your own movements softened by fatigue. The fire burns lower, dancers slowing until the night itself seems to yawn. The jungle hushes, the cicadas taper off, and even the monkeys fall silent. You lie back on the mossy ground, the stone of the temple still glowing faintly in the distance. Above you, the sky is crowded with stars, so thick you wonder if the Maya mapped them all, each one a bead in the endless necklace of time. Your eyelids flutter, the jungle's damp warmth pressing you down into rest. The vines shift gently in the breeze, and the earth itself hums like a lullaby. In the cradle of stone and forest, you drift, half in this world, half in one carved long ago. The pulse of drums in the jungle fades, and when your eyes open again, the air has turned cold and smoky. You find yourself crouched near a roaring fire, its sparks swirling upward into the dark sky. Around you, figures gather with fur-lined cloaks and braided hair, their shadows thrown tall against the wooden walls of a longhouse. Welcome to the world of the Vikings, where bedtime stories come as sagas, told louder than storms. A man with a beard that could host its own wildlife clears his throat, raising a carved drinking horn. The others fall quiet, leaning in, the firelight dancing in their eager eyes. One mainstream historical fact: Vikings weren't just raiders, they were traders, explorers, and settlers. They sailed as far as North America centuries before Columbus, and they carried not only weapons, but also stories. You take a sip from a wooden cup of something suspiciously like mead. It's sweet, heavy, and probably more powerful than anything you'd normally drink before sleep. The bearded man begins, his voice booming. Tales of Odin, who gave up an eye for wisdom, and Thor, who swung his hammer to keep chaos at bay. His words crash like waves, each sentence a thunderclap. Quirky tidbit: in some sagas, Thor is tricked into wearing a wedding dress to retrieve his stolen hammer. You imagine a towering Viking god trying to pull off bridal chic, and you nearly choke on your mead. Even gods can't escape a little comedy. The fire pops, a log collapsing into embers, and the saga rolls on. The storyteller's voice rises and falls, sometimes fierce, sometimes tender, painting battles, voyages, and loves lost to the sea. Historians still argue whether the sagas are faithful records of history or simply myth dressed up with a few real names. Sitting here, you can't tell the difference, and maybe that's the point. A good story doesn't ask to be fact-checked, it asks to be felt. A child near the fire clutches a carved wooden toy, eyes wide as the story twists toward giants and monsters. The longhouse creaks with wind, but inside, the tale is shield enough. You feel yourself lulled by the rhythm. Fire crackle, storyteller's cadence, the occasional grunt of approval from listeners who already know the ending but want to hear it again anyway. You think of how many winter nights like this blurred into one another, until the sagas became as eternal as the stars outside. Someone passes you a chunk of bread smeared with butter. It's warm, dense, grounding, exactly what your drowsy body needs. Outside, you hear the sea crashing against the shore, a reminder that even here, safe by the fire, the ocean waits like a restless giant. You wonder how anyone ever fell asleep, with the knowledge that tomorrow they might climb into a longship and disappear into the horizon. Then again, maybe that's why the sagas mattered. They made the unknown feel familiar. The storyteller's voice softens now, weaving a tale of a journey to Valhalla, where warriors feast forever. The listeners sigh, some leaning back, lids heavy. Even warriors need dreams of eternal rest. The fire burns low, embers glowing like coals in a blacksmith's forge. Smoke curls lazily upward, filling the rafters with the smell of pine and peat. You step outside for a moment, the cold air biting but bracing. Above, the northern lights shimmer, green and purple ribbons undulating like the sky's own lullaby. You pull your cloak tighter, watching as the colors twist and fade. No wonder the Vikings spun stories of gods riding across the heavens. How else do you explain a sky that sings in color? The wind howls faintly, but inside the longhouse the sagas continue, now more murmured than shouted. A woman takes up the tale, her voice low and melodic, weaving dreams as easily as spinning wool. You return to the fire, stretching out on a fur rug, the warmth soaking into your bones. The voices wash over you, storm, hearth, myth, memory, all braided together. The last thing you hear before sleep claims you is the storyteller's chuckle, as if reminding you that even the fiercest warriors knew the value of a bedtime laugh. The sagas blur into your dreams, carrying you on long ships that sail not just through oceans, but through the deep waters of sleep itself. The crackle of the Viking fire dims, and when you stir again, the air is thick with the smell of paint, oil, and candle smoke. You blink and find yourself in a shadowy studio, walls lined with canvases in various stages of life. Brushes rest in jars of cloudy water, and half-finished faces peer at you from the darkness, as though waiting for you to name them. Welcome to the Renaissance, where genius hums in every shadow, and even gossip feels like art. A figure hunched over a canvas turns to glance at you, his hair wild, his hands stained with pigment. He mutters something about light, then squints at the flicker of a candle, as though the flame itself holds secrets. One mainstream historical fact: during the Renaissance, artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo transformed art and science, blending observation with imagination. This wasn't just painting, it was revolution, one brush stroke at a time. You drift closer, stepping over discarded sketches. A sheet on the floor shows anatomical drawings so detailed they make you wonder if the artist borrowed a medical textbook from the future. Quirky tidbit: Leonardo often sketched flying machines that look suspiciously like helicopters and bicycles. You imagine him trying to explain pedals to his friends while they're still struggling with the concept of trousers that don't fall down. The room buzzes with a restless energy, as if creativity itself is alive and pacing. Yet there's also a softness here: the glow of the candle on rough plaster, the smell of wet paint mixing with wood smoke, the quiet scratching of quills from a desk in the corner. Historians still argue whether the Renaissance should be seen as a sudden explosion of genius or simply the natural growth of ideas already simmering in the Middle Ages. Either way, standing here, you can feel the weight of it pressing like a heartbeat against the walls. A young apprentice offers you a stool and pours a cup of wine. It's tart, a little sour but grounding. He leans closer and whispers gossip. Michelangelo works by night and naps in his clothes, refusing to bathe for weeks. Raphael, meanwhile, is charming every patron in Rome with his smooth manners and smoother portraits. You laugh softly. Turns out even Renaissance masters couldn't resist a little workplace drama. The master at the easel sighs, stepping back from his work. On the canvas, a face emerges, half divine, half human. The eyes seem to follow you, filled with secrets you can't quite read. You shiver, though the studio is warm. Outside, a bell tolls, deep and resonant, reminding you that the city itself is alive too. Florence or Rome, it doesn't matter. Here, every street corner hides a masterpiece waiting to be uncovered. The apprentice gestures toward a side door. You slip through and find yourself in another room, brighter, cluttered with parchment, covered in equations and sketches of strange contraptions. A model of a flying machine hangs from the ceiling, its wings of cloth stretched like those of a giant bat. You reach up to touch it, half expecting it to twitch to life and lift you skyward. Through the window, the city murmurs, horses' hooves clattering, merchants shouting, the faint song of a lute drifting up from a tavern. You lean on the sill, watching shadows move across tiled rooftops. The air smells of bread baking and wood smoke, but also of possibility, as if every corner holds a secret ready to tip the world off balance. The apprentice brings you a piece of bread, warm and crusty, and a slice of sharp cheese. You nibble as the studio settles into its nighttime rhythm, brush strokes slowing, quills scratching softer, the master muttering to himself about shadows that just won't behave. You smile at the thought that even geniuses wrestle with stubborn lighting. The candles burn lower, their flames wavering like tired eyes. The studio sighs with quiet, the rustle of parchment, the clink of brushes set aside, the faint drip of paint water. You sink onto a bench, eyelids drooping. The unfinished faces on the canvases seem less eerie now, more like companions waiting to be finished tomorrow. You close your eyes, the smell of paint and candle wax wrapping around you like a blanket. The Renaissance hums gently in your chest, not as a storm, but as a lullaby of invention, genius, and a little bit of mess. In the shadowy studio you drift, carried on brushstrokes into sleep. The scent of paint fades, and when you stir again, the air tastes damp, tinged with coal and fog. A bell tolls somewhere in the mist, and you find yourself standing on a narrow bridge over a slow, dark river. Gas lamps glow faintly along the banks, their light swallowed almost instantly by the fog rolling off the water. Welcome to London, where the Thames whispers under a blanket of smoke, and the city seems to breathe in shadows. You walk along the embankment, boots tapping against wet stone. The fog curls around you, heavy as a blanket, muffling even your own footsteps. Somewhere ahead, laughter bursts from a tavern. The sound swallowed as quickly as it came. One mainstream historical fact. In Shakespeare's London of the late 16th and early 17th centuries, the Thames was both highway and sewer, carrying barges and refuse alike. Standing here, you catch the faint sour-sweet scent of the river, and you're suddenly glad this is only a dream. You wouldn't want to actually dip a toe in. A boat glides silently past, the ferryman's lantern swinging gently. He doesn't look at you, but the glow paints his face in ghostly strokes. From the opposite bank, you hear the faint echo of music, drums, flutes, and voices rising together. Quirky tidbit. Theaters like the Globe sometimes had to flag down barges mid-performance because rowdy boatmen would heckle the actors from the water. You grin, imagining Shakespeare himself trying to outwit a drunken oarsman mid-scene. You follow the sound of music to a timber building crowned with a thatched roof, the Globe itself. Lanterns hang over the entrance, and the crowd bustling outside is loud, colorful, alive. You slip inside, pressing among merchants, apprentices, and nobles, all gathered shoulder to shoulder. The air is thick with the smell of ale, roasted meat, and too many bodies in one place. The stage glows in lamplight, and a troupe of actors bursts forth, their voices carrying into the rafters. Shakespearean words tumble over each other, sharp and witty, yet somehow tender. You catch snippets of familiar lines, daggers, stars, and fools, all woven into rhythm. Historians still argue whether Shakespeare himself played small roles on stage, or whether he preferred to remain in the wings, quill in hand. Tonight, you swear you glimpse a bearded man in the corner, watching with a sly grin, as if daring the audience to notice him. The play unfolds, and the crowd gasps, laughs, and jeers on cue. An orange seller passes by, tossing fruit into eager hands. You catch one. It's tart, refreshing, and sticky, dripping down your fingers. You lick the juice absent-mindedly, already drawn back into the scene. You think about how theater here wasn't just art. It was a raucous community event, half sacred, half circus. As the play winds on, you slip quietly back outside. The night has deepened, and the fog presses even heavier. You wander along narrow streets, the timbered buildings leaning overhead like conspirators. The cobblestones glisten with damp, and rats scurry in the gutters. Yet even here, life hums. A candle burning in a window, a lute strummed faintly behind a shutter, a baker pulling loaves from a glowing oven. You pause on a bridge, gazing down at the black river. The fog shifts, and suddenly the water reflects not just the lights of London, but also your own face, rippled and blurred. The Thames murmurs beneath, carrying centuries of whispers downstream. You wonder how many secrets have slipped into this water. Plans, dreams, maybe even stories yet to be told. The fog thickens again, swallowing the city whole. You close your eyes, the muffled bells tolling somewhere in the distance. The sound mixes with the memory of Shakespeare's words, the laughter of the crowd, the pulse of the river. Wrapped in the damp breath of London, you drift, the city rocking you gently into sleep. The tolling London bells dissolve into a sharper, quicker rhythm. The clatter of hooves over cobblestones, the clink of sabers against buckles, and the restless murmur of a crowd that never seems to sleep. You blink and find yourself in Paris, late 18th century, where the air itself feels charged, almost buzzing. The streets are narrow, the windows close set, and lanterns sway overhead like tiny, flickering hearts. Welcome to the revolution, where even the beds creak with ideas too loud to ignore. You walk past clusters of citizens gathered around pamphlets read aloud by candlelight. Their faces glow with fervor, and their voices rise in waves, hope, fear, anger, and laughter tumbling together. One mainstream historical fact. In the years leading up to the French Revolution, pamphlets and newspapers spread revolutionary ideas at lightning speed, fanning the flames of discontent. Tonight, you're just another pair of ears absorbing words that spark like tinder. The scent of baking bread drifts faintly from a shuttered shop, but it only sharpens the hunger twisting through the streets. A woman mutters about the price of flour, her tone sharp as a knife. You nod politely, though your stomach growls in sympathy. Quirky tidbit. Rumor has it that Marie Antoinette never actually said, "Let them eat cake." The phrase probably existed long before her, attributed to nobles in general. Still, you picture her offering cupcakes at a street corner and decide maybe sarcasm travels faster than facts. You step into a modest inn where a group of men crowd around a wooden table. The air smells of wine and sweat, thick with heat. One slams his fist, declaring liberty for all. Another sketches diagrams of new political systems in the candle wax pooling on the table. Historians still argue whether the revolution was inevitable or avoidable, whether it was sparked by famine, mismanagement, Enlightenment ideals, or just a messy combination of everything at once. The debate doesn't feel abstract here. It burns in every face, every whisper. The innkeeper brings you a rough wooden cup of wine. It's sour, gritty, but it warms your chest as the voices around you swell. You lean back, listening as the crowd sings a verse of La Marseillaise, their voices ragged but powerful. It's not polished music. It's defiance turned melody. You hum along quietly, not wanting to stand out, though the tune threads through your veins like an anthem you somehow already knew. You step outside again. The streets are alive even at midnight. Torches flickering, arguments erupting, children darting barefoot through alleyways. From a window above, someone shouts about liberty. From another, a lullaby floats, trying to soothe a baby despite the chaos below. The duality of it presses against you, the revolution as storm and cradle all at once. A carriage rattles past, its curtains drawn tight. You catch a glimpse of powdered wigs and pale faces inside, eyes darting nervously. The crowd jeers, some throwing stones, but the carriage speeds away into the night. You wonder if its passengers sleep at all, or if fear keeps them pacing like restless ghosts in velvet halls. You wander toward the Seine, where the river glitters with moonlight and the reflection of torches. Bridges hum with foot traffic, merchants, soldiers, citizens moving like ants in every direction. The smell of smoke drifts on the breeze, mingled with roasted chestnuts from a street vendor. You buy one, its heat searing your palm before you bite into its sweetness. It's grounding, earthy, a reminder that even in upheaval, small comforts survive. The bells of Notre Dame toll, deep and resonant, their sound carrying through the night like a heartbeat too big to ignore. You pause, gazing at the cathedral's towers rising above the city, their stone faces lit with firelight. The revolution will reshape everything, but for now, the bells toll the same as they always have. Steady, eternal, indifferent. You lean against the railing of the bridge, chestnut shell crumbling in your hand. The voices of the crowd blur into a hum. The flicker of torches softens, and the river's current lulls you like a slow rocking cradle. The night in Paris is restless, but your body grows heavy, eyelids drooping. In the city where liberty shouts itself hoarse, you drift into a quieter revolution, one of dreams, where even guillotines fall silent. The hum of Paris melts away, replaced by a different kind of rhythm, low, steady, mechanical. You open your eyes to find yourself in a rattling carriage, but not the kind drawn by horses. This one is made of iron and fire, hurtling across tracks that stretch endlessly into the horizon. Steam billows outside the windows, curling into the night sky like ghostly banners. You are on a train, somewhere in the 19th century, where the Industrial Revolution hums you toward dreams. The wooden seat beneath you creaks as the train sways, the steady clack, 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 clack of the wheels forming a hypnotic lullaby. You lean your head against the window, watching fields blur past under a pale moon. The scent inside the carriage is a mixture of coal smoke, leather, and the faint sweetness of someone's wrapped lunch. One mainstream historical fact: the first passenger railways began running in the early 1800s, and by mid-century, trains had shrunk continents, carrying workers, goods, and dreamers at unprecedented speed. The conductor passes through, lantern swinging gently, his uniform neat despite the soot smudges on his hands. He tips his cap to you with a weary smile before moving on. You smile back, though you can't resist a silent thought. Historians still argue whether the rapid expansion of railroads brought more good or harm, speeding progress while also uprooting traditions. Tonight, sitting here with the wheels beneath you, the progress feels almost tender, like a rocking cradle. Across from you, a man in a tall hat snores softly, his head tilted back. Beside him, a child presses her face against the glass, eyes wide at the rushing darkness outside. She whispers to her mother, asking if the moon is following the train. Quirky tidbit: some early passengers actually believed traveling at high speeds could damage the human body, that going faster than 30 miles per hour might cause your bones to rattle apart. You grin at the thought, your bones humming along perfectly fine at what must be twice that speed. You wander down the aisle, swaying with the train's motion. A group of workers plays cards at one end, their laughter filling the carriage. A woman hums a lullaby to her baby, the tune just audible above the rattle of the wheels. You pause to listen, the notes blending into the rhythm of the train itself. It feels like a symphony of travel, coal, steam, laughter, and song woven together. At the back of the train, you push open the door and step out onto the platform between cars. The night wind rushes against your face, sharp and cold, carrying with it the acrid tang of smoke. You grip the railing, heart racing as the landscape whips by in flashes of silver grass, black forests, and occasional lanterns glowing in distant farmhouses. The stars overhead remain steady, patient, as if amused by the little machine racing below them. Somewhere ahead, a whistle shrieks, long, mournful, echoing across the countryside. It's a sound that seems to pierce time itself, part warning, part lullaby. You close your eyes, and for a moment it feels less like a train and more like the world itself is breathing in and out, carrying you along. The train slows, wheels screeching against the tracks, and pulls into a small station. The platform is lit by a few lanterns, and villagers shuffle about, bundled against the night air, carrying sacks, baskets, and cages with restless chickens. You step down briefly, boots clicking against the wooden boards. The air here smells of wet earth and smoke. A vendor sells hot tea from a battered kettle, pouring it into tin cups. You take one, warming your hands around it, and sip carefully. The taste is bitter, but comforting. The station master rings a bell, and the train huffs impatiently, ready to continue. You climb back aboard, settling once more into your seat. The train jolts forward, and soon the rhythm resumes, steady and soothing. The child across from you has fallen asleep against her mother's arm. The tall-hatted man still snores, and the card players laugh more quietly now, voices slurring with fatigue. You lean your head back, closing your eyes. The sound of the wheels becomes a heartbeat, the hiss of steam like a giant's sigh. The train rocks you gently, and for a moment you're not sure whether you're crossing countryside, ocean, or even time itself. All you know is that you're moving, steady, certain, toward someplace new. Wrapped in the warmth of the carriage, lulled by the endless rhythm, you let the industrial lullaby carry you deeper and deeper into a sleep as soft as smoke. The hiss of steam fades, replaced by the dry crackle of wood and the faint smell of smoke. When you open your eyes, the train has vanished, and you're sitting on the hard ground beside a campfire. The flames dance upward, casting sparks into a vast ink-black sky. Stars blaze above you, so many you can't count them, scattered across the night like spilled salt. You are in the American West, sometime in the 19th century, where frontiers stretch as wide as dreams, and campfires spark stories bigger than truth. You shift closer to the fire, feeling its heat lick your skin. Around you, men and women sit cross-legged, hats tipped low, boots scuffed with dust. A pot of coffee bubbles on the edge of the flames, its bitter aroma mingling with the sharper scent of gunpowder oil and horse sweat. One mainstream historical fact: during westward expansion in the mid-1800s, thousands of settlers traveled in covered wagons along trails like the Oregon Trail, chasing land, freedom, and opportunity. Tonight, you're just another traveler on the long, dusty road. Someone strums a guitar softly, the notes twanging into the night. Another voice begins a tale, half memory, half exaggeration, about a bear taller than any tree in Montana. The crowd chuckles, shaking their heads, though one man swears he's seen the claw marks himself. Quirky tidbit. In frontier towns, traveling performers often staged wild storytelling contests, where exaggeration wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated. The bigger the tale, the better. You can almost imagine someone earning free whiskey just for claiming they once arm-wrestled a tornado. The fire pops, sending a spark into the darkness, and you lean back, boots crossed, gazing at the heavens. Historians still argue whether the American West was more lawless myth than reality. Were gunfights really as common as dime novels claimed? Or did storytellers simply polish the dust and blood into something shinier? Listening here, you suspect both are true. The myth feeds the memory, and the memory feeds the myth. A cowboy passes you a tin mug of coffee, its taste bitter enough to jolt your eyelids open. You cough softly, earning a laugh from the group. Someone jokes that this brew could fuel a locomotive, and you grin, remembering the rocking lull of your last journey. The circle feels easy, communal, each voice rising like another log tossed on the fire. One of the women begins singing, her voice clear and strong, carrying across the plains. The lyrics speak of home, of journeys, of promises written in dust. You glance up at the sky again. The stars seem closer out here, as if leaning in to listen. The air is cool, crisp, scented faintly of sagebrush. Your skin tingles, not from fear, but from the sheer vastness pressing in around you. As the singing fades, the group slips into quieter conversations. Two men argue about whether bison or cattle are tougher to herd. A young boy asks if outlaws really sleep with one eye open. An older woman answers without hesitation. Always. You chuckle, though you wonder how much truth lies behind the answer. Someone tells a story about a town where the sheriff never carried a gun, only a Bible and a walking stick, and somehow kept order better than the fastest draw. Another claims to have seen lights on the horizon, dancing in patterns too strange to be lanterns, perhaps spirits, perhaps just desert heat. You lean in, fascinated, though you feel a chill run down your spine. Not all frontier mysteries made it into the history books. The fire burns lower, its glow softer now, painting faces in bronze shadows. The group begins to settle. Some roll into blankets, others lean against saddles, hats pulled low over tired eyes. You stretch out on the hard ground, feeling every ridge and pebble beneath you. It's uncomfortable, yet oddly grounding. Above, the Milky Way spills like a silver river, guiding you just as it once guided wagon trains westward. Your eyelids grow heavy. The last sound you hear is the guitar strumming again, softer now, like a lullaby meant only for you. Sparks rise into the night, disappearing into the infinite sky, and you drift with them, carried into sleep by campfire warmth and frontier myths. The glow of the campfire fades into a softer golden haze. When you stir again, you're no longer lying on the rough ground of the prairie. Instead, you're standing beneath tall lampposts, their bulbs buzzing faintly, bathing the streets in honey-colored light. Music drifts through the air, low, sultry, restless. A saxophone croons from somewhere down the block, and you realize you've wandered into the 1920s, right in the middle of the jazz age. The night smells of cigarette smoke, cheap perfume, and roasted peanuts from a street vendor's cart. This is a city that never sleeps, yet always dreams. Your shoes click against pavement slick from an earlier rain. Neon signs flash above doorways, promising cocktails, dancing, and music until dawn. You pass a club with its windows fogged by breath and sweat. The bass thumps like a heartbeat even out here on the sidewalk. One mainstream historical fact: Prohibition, enforced between 1920 and 1933 in the United States, outlawed the sale of alcohol. But instead of drying up nightlife, it gave rise to thousands of hidden speakeasies. Tonight, you're about to step into one. You push through a side door after giving a password whispered by a doorman in a fedora. Inside, the club glows with warmth and life. Smoke curls in lazy rings above crowded tables. Waiters weave through the press of bodies carrying trays of cocktails that technically aren't supposed to exist. The saxophone wails from the small stage, joined by a trumpet and a drum set that rattles your bones. The rhythm grabs you instantly, tugging at your shoulders and feet, daring you to move. Couples whirl across the dance floor, sequins flashing, feathers bobbing. You catch sight of a woman in a fringed dress, her laugh carrying louder than the band for just a moment. Quirky tidbit: the Charleston dance craze swept across America in this era, so popular that some cities actually tried to ban it, calling it indecent and dangerous to morals. You grin, because watching the dancers kick and spin here, the only real danger seems to be twisted ankles and broken shoes. At the bar, a man in a pinstripe suit tells a story about Al Capone. He swears he once saw the famous gangster tipping an entire bar staff with $100 bills, though the bartender beside him rolls his eyes. Historians still argue whether Capone was more folk hero or ruthless villain. Sitting here, with laughter bubbling over the notes of jazz, you wonder if both could be true. Villain by day, myth by night. The band kicks into a faster tune, and suddenly the dance floor is a blur of motion. Someone grabs your arm, pulling you into the chaos. You stumble at first, then find yourself keeping time, your body surrendering to the rhythm. Your feet tap, spin, shuffle, clumsy but free. For a few breathless moments, you are just another body lost in the haze of music and movement. When you finally break away, breathless and laughing, you collapse onto a chair near the stage. A server places a glass in front of you, something amber and smoky, served in a tumbler heavy as stone. You take a cautious sip, the warmth flooding your chest. Sweeter than you expected. Maybe it's whiskey, maybe it's gin, maybe it's just the taste of rebellion disguised as hospitality. A trumpet solo rises, sharp and playful, like a conversation in sound. The crowd claps along, some shouting encouragement. The drummer grins, sweat gleaming on his forehead, while the saxophonist closes his eyes, lost entirely in the sound. The music builds until it feels like the very walls are vibrating, then drops suddenly into a soft, silky whisper. The silence that follows is so fragile, you almost hold your breath. Then the crowd erupts in cheers. You slip outside into the street again, the air cooler now. The night quieter, but still alive with murmurs. A Model T rattles past, headlights cutting sharp beams through the mist. You wander aimlessly, letting the music echo in your ears long after the door swings shut. Somewhere ahead, a newspaper boy calls out headlines about stock markets and politics. You buy a paper, the ink smudging your fingers. The world is changing, fast and sharp, yet here on these streets, in these clubs, it feels like everyone has agreed to live only for tonight. You fold the paper, tucking it under your arm, and pause beneath a streetlight. The glow hums overhead, casting your shadow long against the sidewalk. Your eyelids grow heavy, your body still swaying with phantom music. The city seems to sway with you, pulsing to the same rhythm. The last thing you hear is a distant saxophone, mournful and sweet, carrying you down into dreams. The saxophone fades into silence, and the neon glow dims until all that remains is blackness. When you open your eyes, the air feels heavy, thick with tension. The streetlights are dark. Windows are shuttered. A faint rustle passes overhead, not music, but the low drone of airplanes circling somewhere beyond the horizon. You realize you've slipped into the 1940s in a city under blackout during World War II. The cobblestones beneath your shoes are slick with mist, and your steps echo unnaturally loud in the quiet. No neon signs, no shopfront lights, just the faint glow of the moon, sometimes veiled by drifting clouds. One mainstream historical fact: during the war, cities across Europe and beyond enforced blackouts, covering windows and extinguishing street lamps to prevent enemy bombers from spotting their targets. Tonight, you walk through a darkness so complete it feels almost alive. Somewhere down the block, you hear the creak of a door and see the faint outline of a woman guiding her children quickly inside. The sound of the latch clicking shut feels louder than a gunshot. You keep walking, shoulders tense, as if every shadow might leap out. And yet, amid the fear, there is a strange comfort. Everyone is hidden together. Hearts beating in unison beneath the same sky. You pass a shelter entrance where volunteers hand out blankets and mugs of thin soup. The steam curls upward, carrying the smell of onions and something vaguely metallic. A man nearby tells a joke about the soup being so weak you could see your reflection in it, and a ripple of weary laughter follows. Quirky tidbit: some families painted their cows with white stripes so drivers could see them better in the pitch-black nights. You imagine stumbling over a zebra-patterned cow in the darkness and nearly chuckle out loud, breaking the silence. Further on, you reach the edge of a park where sandbags line the pathways like silent guardians. You sink down onto one, brushing dust from your coat. Overhead, the stars are startlingly bright without city lights to compete. It's beautiful, in a way the world rarely gets to be, and you wonder if some people secretly found solace in these darkened nights. Historians still argue whether blackouts strengthened community bonds or deepened fear. Sitting here, surrounded by quiet strangers, you lean toward the former. A siren wails suddenly, piercing and shrill, cutting through the stillness like a knife. People scramble into shelters, doors banging shut, voices hushed but urgent. Your pulse quickens, but you stay rooted for a moment, staring at the sky. The droning of planes grows louder. Your body urges you to run, but there's something mesmerizing about the anticipation, the whole city holding its breath together. Finally, you duck into the nearest shelter, a cramped basement lit by a few flickering candles. The air is thick with the smell of damp stone, sweat, and nervous breath. People huddle close, some clutching rosaries, others clasping hands. A soldier cracks a joke about how the rats have claimed the best sleeping spots, and again, there's a murmur of laughter, thin but real. Humor becomes a shield sharper than steel. Children whisper questions to their parents, voices trembling but curious. A young girl asks why the bombs fall at night. Her mother strokes her hair, whispering an answer you can't quite hear, but the tenderness softens the room. Someone begins humming softly, just a tune at first, Then another voice joins, then another. Soon, the shelter hums with a melody that almost drowns out the sounds above. It's imperfect, quivering, but strangely strong. The walls tremble faintly, dust drifting from the ceiling. You close your eyes, gripping your knees, the humming wrapping around you like a blanket. Minutes stretch into forever, but at last, the drone of planes fades. The siren changes pitch, signaling the all clear. A collective sigh rises from the crowd, half relief, half exhaustion. People stir, gathering their coats, whispering promises to sleep once they return home. You step back into the open air. The silence is deeper than before, broken only by distant footsteps. The stars still blaze above, steady and unshaken. You breathe in cool night air, tinged faintly with smoke, and though your heart still races, you feel strangely calm. There's a quiet solidarity in this darkness, as if every soul is a candle hidden behind a curtain, glowing unseen, but together. You walk slowly down the street, shoulders loosening with each step. The blackout city feels less like a void and more like a vast, soft cocoon. Each shadow seems less threatening, more like a companion keeping you company. The hush of the night, once suffocating, now lulls you. Your eyes droop, the rhythm of your footsteps slowing until they match the quiet pulse of the sleeping city. Wrapped in the silence of war and the resilience of those around you, you drift into slumber, soothed by shadows and starlight. The blackout streets fade away, and the trembling hum of airplanes dissolves into a new sound, a low, mechanical whir that doesn't belong to the earth at all. You open your eyes, and instead of cobblestones beneath your shoes, you feel nothing but weightlessness. Your stomach flips gently as your body floats upward, arms reaching out instinctively. The floor is gone, the ground is gone. Everything you've ever known is now a glowing marble far below. You are in the space age, drifting with astronauts, eyelids heavy as the world itself spins beneath you. The cabin around you is compact, every surface cluttered with switches, wires, and tiny glowing lights. Straps and Velcro patches keep notebooks, pens, and food packets from drifting away. One mainstream historical fact. In 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first human to orbit Earth, circling the planet in just 108 minutes. Tonight, you are slipping into his place, or perhaps alongside him, watching Earth through a small round window as it turns, impossibly beautiful. Outside the glass, the planet swirls with blue oceans, white clouds, and golden patches of desert. You've seen maps your whole life, but nothing prepares you for this. Earth looks alive, like a glowing lantern suspended in endless dark. You reach for the window, palm pressing against the cool glass, though there's no way to touch the fragile skin of atmosphere that holds everything you've ever known. A fellow astronaut floats past, pushing off the wall with practiced grace. He grins at you, though the expression looks funny in the bulky helmet he's adjusting. He offers you a pouch of food, a squeezed tube of something labeled beef stew. You try it, grimacing at the texture, but the taste isn't half bad. Quirky tidbit. Early astronauts complained more about food than danger, calling some space meals glorified baby food. You decide that's pretty accurate as you suck another reluctant mouthful. The spacecraft beeps, and a voice crackles over the radio. Mission control, distant yet comforting, like a parent whispering directions from far away. You float closer to listen, though most of the jargon is technical. Still, the tone soothes you. Even in the void, you are tethered by human voices. Historians still argue whether the race to the moon was driven more by genuine curiosity or by political rivalry. You imagine both were true. Scientists hungry for wonder, leaders hungry for bragging rights. You clip your tether to a hook and push yourself toward the hatch. The astronaut beside you nods, then helps guide you into your suit. The process is slow, deliberate, like wrapping yourself in an armored cocoon. Finally, the hatch opens, and suddenly you're floating, into open space. The silence hits you first. Absolute, unbroken silence, so complete it almost roars. The stars are sharper here, pinpricks of light so steady they feel eternal. Earth hangs below, turning silently, clouds drifting across its surface like slow breath. Your body drifts outward, tether line trailing, until you're suspended above everything. Nations, wars, stories, myths, reduced to a fragile sphere of color in the void. Your gloved hands fumble slightly as you turn, adjusting with tiny bursts of gas from your pack. The movement feels clumsy but free, like learning to swim in an endless ocean. You laugh softly, though no sound leaves your helmet, only your own ears catching the vibration. After what feels like forever, and no time at all, you drift back toward the hatch. The astronaut helps pull you inside, closing the door with a heavy clunk. The cabin feels cramped now, but safe, like a nest compared to the infinite outside. You peel off the helmet, your hair sticking damply to your forehead, and sink against the wall, chest heaving. The lights inside dim to night mode, bathing the cabin in soft red glow. You float in the half-darkness, body rocking gently with every shift of the craft. From a nearby speaker, someone has put on a tape, soft music that wavers slightly as it plays. Maybe it's a love song, maybe just static masquerading as melody. Either way, it settles over you like a blanket. Through the window, the earth rolls on, patient and luminous. The sun rises along its curve, spilling golden fire across the oceans in a way that seems almost staged. The light catches your eyes, warming them until they blur with tears you can't quite blink away. Your body grows heavy, though weight is an illusion here. The hum of machinery, the faint rustle of fabric, the steady heartbeat of the planet below. They lull you deeper. You close your eyes, drifting in rhythm with the spacecraft, rocked to sleep not by earth or sea, but by the eternal, endless night of space. The soft hum of machinery fades, and the glow of Earth below your spacecraft dissolves into something sharper, brighter. You blink and find yourself back on solid ground, but it's not quite the world you left. Instead of starfields and silence, neon lights pulse overhead, casting pinks and blues across wet pavement. Screens flicker on every wall, their images shifting faster than your eyes can follow. You are in the age of circuits and code, where stories live not in parchment or firelight, but in glowing pixels. You wander down a crowded street, though no one seems to look at each other. Heads are bent toward handheld screens, fingers tapping, eyes reflecting blue light. A shopfront blares electronic music, its bass trembling through your chest. One mainstream historical fact. In 1969, the first message was sent over ARPANET, the network that would grow into the internet. That moment, just a couple of letters before the system crashed, was the spark that would eventually light up the neon-drenched world around you now. Above the street, billboards tower, some advertising sneakers, others displaying news feeds, others showing looping clips of cats doing backflips. Quirky tidbit. The very first image ever uploaded to the World Wide Web wasn't a scientific diagram or a serious document. It was a joke band photo of CERN employees dressed as glamorous singers. You grin, realizing that even at the birth of the digital age, humans couldn't resist slipping a joke into history. You duck into a cafe, its windows fogged from the heat of machines. Inside, people sit hunched over laptops, the soft clatter of keyboards mixing with the hiss of espresso machines. The smell of coffee is thick, nearly masking the faint tang of overheated electronics. You order a drink and find yourself next to a young coder muttering about debugging. He slams his hands dramatically on the keyboard, then sighs in relief when the screen lights up with a simple, "Hello world." Historians still argue whether the digital revolution connected people or isolated them further. Sitting here, you feel both truths at once, lonely eyes glowing in blue light, yet invisible threads linking them all. The barista brings you your cup, foam shaped into a wobbly heart. You sip carefully. It's too hot, but the bitterness grounds you. On the wall nearby, a flat screen cycles through headlines about distant wars, celebrity scandals, and stock market jumps, each given equal urgency. It feels overwhelming, as though the whole planet is whispering in your ear all at once. You wonder how anyone sleeps in a world that never stops talking. A notification sound pings from a nearby phone, sharp enough to make you glance up. The owner, a teenager with bright headphones, laughs and turns the screen so her friend can see. They share a meme, a joke so quick and simple it vanishes almost instantly. But the laughter lingers. Maybe this is how modern myths are born, not through sagas and scrolls, but through loops of humor passed from one glowing screen to another. You leave the cafe and step into an arcade just a few doors down. Lights flash wildly, machines beep in endless loops. A child grips a joystick with white knuckles, piloting a spaceship through glowing tunnels. You smile, remembering your own weightless journey just a section ago, and wonder if imagination fuels reality or the other way around. The arcade feels like a shrine to both. Pixels pretending to be adventures, adventures that somehow shaped the pixels. The city outside hums louder now. Self-driving cars whisper past, their headlights smooth arcs in the dark. Drones buzz overhead, carrying packages like tiny robotic bees. Everywhere, screens reflect off puddles, giving the ground itself a neon heartbeat. You pause at a crosswalk where no one talks, yet everyone moves in unison, guided by signals glowing green and red. Somewhere above, on the side of a skyscraper, a projection flickers to life, an old black and white film reel playing across steel and glass. The crowd slows to watch for a moment, strangers suddenly connected by the grainy image. For once, no one checks their phone. The silence feels sacred. Then the reel ends, the projection fades, and the river of people flows again, each back into their private glow. You climb a staircase to a rooftop garden, where the buzz of the city dulls slightly. The plants sway gently in artificial light, leaves catching the glow of passing billboards. You sink onto a bench, the neon haze reflected in your eyes. The city sprawls endlessly below, a labyrinth of circuits and dreams stitched together. Your body grows heavy, though the world around you never slows. Notifications ping, lights flash, engines hum, and screens glow. But you begin to tune them out, one by one. The neon softens, The sounds stretch into a hum until the digital twilight feels less frantic, more like a lullaby coded just for you. Your eyelids droop, and you surrender, drifting into sleep even as the city continues to scroll without you. Somewhere in the glow, stories keep writing themselves. Threads of code, fragments of laughter, whispers in the endless ether. The neon haze dissolves, and suddenly, you're no longer in the pulsing digital city, but lying in a quiet meadow under a sky that seems to stretch forever. Grass brushes against your hands, soft and cool, and above you, the stars shimmer, not as distant lights, not as cold pinpricks, but as old friends. You feel your body relax, melting into the earth, as though all the journeys you've taken, through firelit caves, Roman arenas, Renaissance halls, shadowed trenches, and orbiting spacecraft, have carried you here, to this single still moment. The meadow hums with nighttime life. Crickets chirp, a soft rhythm that steadies your breath. Fireflies drift lazily, their glow rising and falling like gentle pulses of thought. A stream babbles nearby, its water catching fragments of starlight, weaving them into liquid silver. One mainstream historical fact. Across countless cultures, humans once turned to the stars not just for beauty, but for guidance. Sailors used constellations to steer across oceans. Farmers planted according to lunar cycles. Tonight, you're not navigating seas or sowing seeds. You're simply letting the constellations steer you toward sleep. You trace shapes in the sky, connecting dots in ways no astronomer would approve. There's a crooked dog, a wobbly ladder, maybe even the outline of your favorite snack. Quirky tidbit. The ancient Babylonians once saw a lion in the stars, where the Greeks later imagined Hercules. Same points of light, different stories. You laugh softly, realizing people will always see what they need in the night sky. Sometimes a hero, sometimes a snack, maybe sometimes both. The stars seem to pulse slowly now, dimming and brightening in rhythm with your breathing. You roll onto your side, the grass cushioning you like the world's simplest mattress. The air is cool, carrying a faint sweetness of wildflowers. A soft breeze stirs your hair, and you sigh into the calm, feeling the weight of your eyelids tugging gently. Historians still argue whether myths were meant to explain natural phenomena or simply to comfort restless minds. But as you lie here, you know it doesn't matter. The sky itself is both an explanation and a comfort, an endless, sparkling bedtime story that outlasts every empire, every war, every digital ping. You remember fragments of your journey, the clumsy mammoth hunt, Cleopatra's coal-lined eyes, the awkward astronaut meals, the buzzing neon signs. Each memory floats past like a dream already fading. You realize they're all pieces of the same thing, people telling stories, trying to make sense of the dark, trying to feel a little less alone. The meadow quiets. Even the crickets seem to pause, giving you silence as soft as a blanket. The stars blur slightly, not because they fade, but because your eyes grow heavy. You let the blur deepen, turning the sharp points into hazy clouds of light. It feels right, like the universe itself is dimming its lamps so you can rest. A yawn pulls through you, slow and unhurried, and your body curls instinctively into the earth's embrace. Every sound now stretches, softens. The water trickles like a whisper. The breeze becomes a sigh. The fireflies blink slower and slower until they seem to pause mid-air. The night doesn't demand anything of you. It doesn't ask you to fight mammoths to debate philosophers, to launch rockets, or to decode memes. It just holds you gently, rocking you on its quiet rhythms until your body feels heavy and your thoughts feel light. Sleep waits patiently, not rushing, just circling closer. You breathe in once more, the cool grass, the faint flowers, the quiet hum of the earth, and breathe out all the journeys behind you. You are still, you are safe, and you are drifting, carried not by ships or machines, but by the oldest story of all, the turning of night into rest. Now, as the meadow fades and the stars dim to a gentle glow, let yourself ease fully into stillness. The rhythm of the story has slowed, stretched like a soft fabric laid over you, and all the bustling scenes, the battles, the libraries, the buzzing neon, have fallen far behind. What remains is only quiet. Notice how your body feels heavier now, as though the ground beneath you has grown softer, deeper, pulling you into perfect rest. The sounds of the night are faint, almost like a lullaby designed only for you. The grass no longer tickles. It simply cushions. The breeze no longer stirs. It only soothes. Even your thoughts, once restless travelers, grow drowsy, curling up beside you like tired companions. The stars overhead shimmer more faintly, as though the universe itself knows it's time to sleep. Their light stretches longer, slower, until it feels like each sparkle is a long sigh in the sky. You don't need to follow them anymore. You don't need to chase mammoths or rockets or neon dreams. You've reached the end of this journey, and the only road left is the one that drifts downward into rest. So let go. Let your breath fall into a steady rhythm, each inhale carrying calm, each exhale carrying away the weight of the day. The story is closing now, but the peace it leaves behind will linger, wrapping you in quiet. You are safe. You are steady. And as the last flicker of light fades, you are ready to slip into deep, gentle sleep.